By the end of this video, you're going to have a much more clear understanding in regards to house or apartment. Which one is more appealing? Which one is more beneficial? Which one makes more sense? It's common amongst the older generations to think that the younger generation will lean more towards purchasing apartments as opposed to purchasing houses. So here's an interesting question. Would you purchase a $30 million apartment or a $30 million house? Leave your answer down below along with a reason why. But in this video, we're focusing on both purchases, comparing both purchases, houses and apartments, and we're going to be examining based on 3 criteria: price range and what you can get for that specific price range, space and usability, and then finally flexibility. So number 1, price, number 2, space, and number 3, flexibility. So the first criteria is price. So let's analyze both purchases separately based on price. The general trend in the market currently is that apartments tend to be more expensive in comparison to houses. And that conclusion can be made with the predominant factor being, or the predominant consideration being, value for money. So here's a brief example of what I'm explaining. In regards to square footage and building size, you can get a much bigger house for the same price as an apartment. So that's what I mean by value for money. However, an advantage that the apartment would have in regards to square footage and building size is that there's less strain in terms of maintenance. So for example, if you purchase a house, you'll have to pay somebody to cut the lawn or cut it yourself. With apartments, however, there tends to be a maintenance cost, which is usually not as much as occupying and maintaining a house. And we can take it a step further in terms of price and value for money. In terms of apartments, they tend to be located in and around very central areas, which could be viewed as a valuable characteristic. So it's a constant give or take, hence the debate. However, it comes down to preferences and how much you're willing to spend. So we just discussed the first criteria, which is price. Moving on to the second criteria, which is space and usability. And the usual differentiating characteristics in regards to space and usability include yard space, or the amount of yard space, the level of privacy, the amenities, the square footage of the building or the unit in the case of an apartment. The yard space and building size of an apartment tends to be less in comparison to a house. The advantage that many apartment complexes might have would be maybe access to a pool or access to a gym. However, this isn't always the case for apartments, which could be viewed as a disadvantage. For example, if you have kids, there's very little room for outside activity. So we discussed the first 2 criteria, which were price and space. And now moving on to the third criteria, which is flexibility. We're going to address flexibility from 2 different angles. Flexibility in terms of what you can do with an apartment or house, and then flexibility in terms of daily convenience. So firstly, flexibility in terms of what you can do with it. The simple answer is apartments tend to be less flexible in this sense. Why? Well, in regards to apartments, you can't just get up and decide that you want to add an additional bedroom. Also, as a result of having restricted yard space, or in some cases none at all, you can't just decide that you want to do some outdoor farming, for example. In regards to purchasing a house, these limitations are far less. So with a house, making an addition is possible. Choosing how you want to use the yard space has less restrictions. Now, approaching from the angle of flexibility in terms of daily convenience, it could be argued that apartments are more convenient. There's less of a burden in terms of maintaining the property, as well as, like I mentioned earlier, apartments are usually in and around very central areas. So remember to leave a comment down below in regards to which one you would choose, a $30 million apartment or a $30 million house. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next video.